coming to our discussion in just a moment, but I'd like to introduce the number tonight because it pertains to what we'll be discussing tonight. This is a number that we need to take note of as we go into the general election on the 8th of August, which is just 78 days away. And this is obviously the second time we're having this election under the new constitution that allows independent candidates. Take a look at this number for the week. We have discussed this before, but it is worth noting once again. 3,752 is the total number of independent candidates across all 6 seats that have been registered by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. A big number, but let's take a look at where they are biggest. Now, these are the top 10 counties with the highest number of independent candidates. So this is definitely a constituency to watch. 439, Nairobi tops that list. Kiambu at 223, Nakuru at 193. And if you take a look at Meru and Bungoma coming in at 169 and 165 respectively. Kakamega and Nyeri are in a tie with 145 independent candidates. The number goes all the way down to Trans Nzoia with 114. These are the top 10 counties with the highest number of independent candidates. Definitely not a number to be wished away. And one that we will be talking about amongst other things tonight when we take a look at the politics of the week. Remember, these independent candidates were meeting last week and they have their own sort of association coming together saying they will not be ignored. So we will talk about that and a lot of other issues tonight. Here's my able panel of analysts, today joined by a politician. Thank you, ladies, gentlemen. I'll start with the introductions on my extreme right. Joy Brenda Mdivo, who's an advocate of the High Court. Thank you. Jeanette Mohammed is Suna East MP and Director of Elections in ODM. Daisy Amdani works with Women in Politics, the National Coordinator for the National Women's Steering Committee. And then we have Kamodo Waiganjo. Many of you will remember him as a former commissioner with the CIC, understanding the Constitution. We'll be talking about that and what it brings today. But guests first. So we'll start with you, Jeanette. Well, there have been a number of issues, and we've had this discussion before, that have been raised by your coalition with respect to IEBC. We've had 2 over the last week. One about, this collusion allegedly with Safaricom. And then there's also the idea of reshuffling of returning officers. Could you tell us about this litany of complaints you have with the electoral management body?
Thank you, Yvonne. First and foremost, what my coalition is trying to do basically is to build confidence and trust in the management of the elections of the country. We want to have people, we want to create a scenario where people have confidence in the job IEBC is going to do on 8th of August 2017. For that reason, it is important to raise matters early enough before the elections so that there is a level playing field and everybody has faith in how things are being done. For example, we have to raise issues relating to Safaricom because we know what happened in 2013, failure of servers, failure of electronic system, and the service provider at that time was only one, it was Safaricom. Issues of returning officers, there is the election regulations, number 3, which says that when you want to reshuffle and do posting of returning officers, political parties must be allowed to do presentations, which we believe never happened. And IEBC never invited any presentation from any political party. So those are the issues that we have to raise them early so that at the time of elections, we have a smooth and free, fair, credible elections.
All right, Daisy, he says it's raising the red flag early enough to enable some of these issues to be sorted out. What are your thoughts?
I think it's good to hear that they want to raise these issues so that we have a smooth process. But I think the manner in which they are being raised leaves a lot to be desired, particularly if you're seeking to build credibility in the electoral management body, then you do not raise them in the public domain. They would raise these issues with the IEBC away from the public because the manner in which they have raised it casts more aspersions and leaves a lot to be desired because what happens is that now a lot of people are left asking how credible then will the process be. The issues that they raise are valid, and I think that there's need to bring more people on board, because there are more people than just the political parties that are concerned with the manner in which the elections will be carried out. So to raise these issues in a public rally really doesn't work towards building confidence.
Jeanette?
Nothing could be further from the truth. First, we have raised these issues with the election body in writing. We have a big file now at the office of our coalition. We've been writing to them every week on issues. When you see us taking up the matter at political rallies is when we don't get appropriate response from IEBC. They never, some of the times they don't respond to our letters. Time is running. We are basically 70 days or 80 days to the elections. So we have now to bring it to the public domain that we have raised these matters 2 weeks or 1 week ago or 1 month ago, but IEBC has not responded appropriately. People must know so that people later don't say, why didn't you say these things now that you're complaining at the election day?
All right. And Joy, this is now going to court, as NASA has indicated that they will now take this matter to the judiciary. I think this commission, since its formation early this year, has been in and out of court. Could you talk to us about that dynamic and whether that, affects the electoral timelines, or whether NASA has every right to go to court on these issues?
Let me just put into context what we're dealing with. The Office of the Attorney General annual budget is 4.6 billion shillings. Last year, in the last fiscal year, the IEBC paid in legal fees 4 billion shillings. So that tells you how much litigation actually not only bogs down the Electoral Commission, but is actually a seeper of the money that is supposed to be used to build credible elections is being spent on litigation. Now, this is a situation that's very worrying, because we have a country where we try to legislate everything, but we cannot legislate good manners. If people will just not be men of their word, people cannot be held to account to do what is right, we cannot pass a law to have every single thing micromanaged. I mean, look at what happened, for example, in South Korea. You had a president who was alleged to have had some corrupt dealings. Her friend was indicted. She was impeached. She's now facing trial. They have gone ahead and elected a new president while we are still planning our election here in Kenya. Same thing with France.
Yeah.
The Brits are going to do theirs and finish it
Right.
while we are still mark timing. So every time we hear something happening and we go to court, I'm a lawyer and I'll tell you, if you want to find a law that says this is the correct position, you'll find it. If you want to find something that says the opposite, you will find it. You want to bog a process down, take it to court. That is the surest place to make matters stall. And seeing the way the timelines have been moving, I don't think it's the wisest thing to do. Sometimes it's better to have some faith in the systems that we have, in what we have already put in place. Try it out for size. Does it work? But what I see sometimes with NASA is also trying to micromanage the process. And like Daisy said, when you play it in the public domain, what it does is undermine the credibility rather than building the credibility.
All right. Kamodo, we've talked about this before, but yet NASA is the only one that seems to be raising quite a number of issues and concerns. We don't hear the same complaints from other political players in the sector. And I'm not asking you to speak on behalf
Yes.
of the other political
I'm
players,
wondering
but just your observations with that one.
I am not the opposite of Junet.
No, you are not.
I think the truth of the matter is NASA is entitled, and I think let's keep that. It's entitled to raise these issues because the elections are too important to be left to just IEBC. But I think we must ask ourselves, what is it that we are seeking to achieve? What we are seeking to achieve are two things. One is a credible election, but also a credible electoral management body. And so for that reason, how we manage information is critical. Let me give you two examples. On the issue of the returning officers, I believe NASA has gone to court. That matter should not be discussed in the public domain because then it prejudices the process and the environment in which that is happening. The issue of the declaration of results of the constituencies, that matter is in court. As that is in court, NASA is in a public gathering saying, if this decision does not go away, we will boycott elections. That is irresponsible of a political party. So what I'm saying is they must raise these issues, but they must ensure that as they raise them, what we are doing is building credibility in the process. We are working together to resolve a problem. Let us not assume that every time IEBC makes mistakes, and IEBC will make mistakes, that those mistakes are intended to rig elections. Now, obviously, they can be, but let's not assume that that's the only thing, because NASA itself, they make mistakes all the time. So let's also recognize that, institutions are not perfect. So when things go wrong, let's take them in good stride. Let the institutions then prove us wrong. But in the meantime, you can't be in court.
Kamodo NASA will say, and I'll allow him to say that let the institutions prove us wrong. They have a litany of times when they say the electoral management proved them wrong or proved them right in terms of their issues. What would you say to a number of allegations that are coming out that with all of this bombardment of the IEBC, that you are in fact demeaning its credibility day after day with the constant attacks, Jeanette?
Not really. Let me pick it from where Kokili has left. There are many times institutions have let this country down.
That's true.
Last elections, the institution of IEBC let this country down. 2007, the same. Now, by bringing out these issues in public domain is to ask IEBC to be accountable to Kenyans. When you see NASA addressing those issues in public rallies, they know what is happening in the political field in this country. We know of people, the judiciary is very important institution, and we know that it's operating under thorough independence. But we know there are people who are trying to interfere, even how the judiciary is supposed to do their work.
Allow me to,
so we are trying to preempt many things before they happen.
Okay.
So we are not trying to
the
say...
same could have been said of when Majority Leader Aden Duale made that statement against Justice Odunga in the streets of Nairobi, when he himself was just about to rule on a matter that you had before that judge. And then there was claims of interference.
The Majority Leader attacked the personality of a judge. He talked about Justice Odunga himself. As we have not discussed any judge who is hearing that matter. We've just talked about the matter in generality.
And how it should be determined?
If so-and-so, judge so-and-so rules against us, we are going to do this. Exactly that's what the majority leader said. If Justice Odunga rules in favor of NASA, we are going to table a motion in Parliament to discuss his conduct.
That is exactly what you have said.
No, that's far from
You know who I know? Let me tell you.
Misinterpretation of the facts.
The matter is being heard by a panel of Court of Appeal judges.
Who are those panels?
So when you say if those judges rule against us, you're essentially telling the court that they must rule in a particular way. That cannot help
with a
restore the
matter
confidence.
where even the bench has not been formed.
It doesn't matter.
We don't know who the people are who are going to listen. But we have to tell our people what is happening.
But I think there's a better way. There's a better way. And it's not just your people, because it's not just your people that are involved in the electoral process or that have a stake in the electoral process. It is all Kenyans. So I think there's a better way to raise these issues, because the issues that you do raise are valid. People are concerned and want us to be assured of a credible process. But when you continually cast aspersions and issue threats, it doesn't build confidence. It undermines the judiciary. And I think that the judiciary, even from the way it has conducted itself, has proven itself to be a fair arbiter.
Yes. So are you saying, Jeanette, that you don't have faith in the courts?
No, we have faith in the courts.
But you just talked about a number of people who are trying to manipulate the process.
We have information that there are people who want to manipulate and interfere with the judiciary.
Then those are the people that you need to be. Those are the people you need to be outing, not the judiciary. No, but you should be calling them out.
But perhaps Kenyans don't know who are these faceless people you're addressing.
Kenyans should know from tonight that we are addressing those people who want to interfere with the courts and not the judges themselves. Number two, you see, when NASA speaks, they are not speaking just for the sake of politicking. They are speaking is based on issues that they have seen. I've told you we've written many times for the IEBC themselves. They have not responded to those issues. IEBC itself, appealing on that matter, we feel it is suspicious. Because
why is that?
A three-bench high court court, has given them an opinion or a decision on a matter.
Should they not appeal that decision?
I feel personally they should not have appealed on that matter.
On this
Why is that? Let's allow him to explain this point.
They must be, it looks they are like propagating certain interests that we feel that are not right. That's our opinion.
There's something dishonest. There's something dishonest here. On a Junet Mohammed, we were with you in Windsor for 2 weeks.
Correct.
That issue of where the presidential election result should be announced was debated at length and a consensus made. And in fact, the law that came out from Windsor addresses that issue
Totally, in a bipartisan manner. So actually, when NASA takes this position, they're actually running away from a decision which had been made bipartisan.
No.
And that it's in the law. Check the law, and it will say, no, let me finish. It actually says who will announce which results. And the reasons were explained in that meeting and bought in by everybody. So it's also actually fairly, hypocritical for NASA to take the opposite position on a position which was agreed in a bipartisan manner. So I think there's another issue there that is wrong.
No, not really. In fact, that issue is not one of the issues that took us to Windsor.
It's in the law.
Number two, what people are conversing now, you're a lawyer, are constitutional provisions. We are no longer discussing the statutes that we made at Parliament. And the people who went to court are not NASA. 3 Kenyans went to court to seek the court's opinion on how results will be declared. And they have every right. Even if we did the wrong things in Windsor,
right. But IEBC has no right to appeal that.
They have a right, but suspicious.
Joy, what are your thoughts?
They reserve the right, because if you're in an adversarial system, the outcome is either or. And when the outcome comes, if there is a higher court to which you can appeal, there's nothing stopping you from doing it.
Okay. I'd like us to also talk about the issue of independent candidates for just a moment to pivot this. And we saw that they came together over the last week. And I think we've discussed this issue of how independent are independent candidates. But I'd like us to listen to a statement that was made by a NASA leader, and that is the party leader of the ANC, that's Musalia Mudavadi. This is a statement he made recently on the issue of independent candidates on this matter. Let's listen to Musalia now.
Wewe namna gani bwana? Wewe mtu ambao umeshindwa hapa kwa mchujo unaenda nini independent?
Okay, so I think we will start with you, Jeanette. Your response to this, a NASA leader saying independent candidates mulishindwa kwa mchujo, maneno gani here?
Yeah, that's true. And, the NASA principles, each one of them is a party leader, certain party. So you expect them to campaign for their party candidates. You don't expect them to campaign for another candidate or an independent. Basically, what they are saying is that they are going to campaign for their candidates in their parties, and independents, as they are called independents, they should campaign independently. That's what they mean, according to the way I've understood the statement.
This sounds like a Wekataya moment. This really does sound like a defense of the Wekataya moment that many will remember. So, but if you listen to that statement, he's basically rubbishing these independent candidates that you lost in the primaries. Why would you want to go independent? So are you then saying, Jeanette, that any of these independent candidates that say, well, I'm going to vie on my own, but still pledge support to Raila Odinga or still pledge support to, Uhuru Kenyatta, what is that about? Will you take them in? Are they part of you? Do you support them? Will you work with them? What's the position?
Every party wants to have as much numbers as possible in parliament. So ODM wants to have majority in parliament, likewise Jubilee. So every party will campaign for their candidates as MCAs and MPs and senators. But they're also telling the independents, campaign as independents. The ones who wants to support Raila, that's fine.
So you're happy with the ones that want to support you?
That's fine. If you want to support Raila at the presidential level and say that vote for Raila, if you can add something small on top, we will agree. But at lower level, every party will campaign for their candidates and independents will campaign as independents.
All right. Many of them say it's as a result of, the primaries that want free and fair in the various parties, including yours. And it's good that we have you here because you're the director of elections in your party. Many complaints have been made and continue to be made about the manner in which the primaries were conducted.
That's true. There were many challenges that the parties faced in conducting their nominations.
Daisy
some of
perhaps
them
agrees to a greater extent.
Some of them were timelines that were created by law, that you should conduct your nominations from 12th of April to 26th of April, because some of the parties like mine wanted to start nominations in January, so that if you complain, they have time to repeat and repeat. But IEBC said, according to the law, they must gazette all the aspirants, and then after that, you're allowed 2 weeks period to conduct the nominations. So there were a lot of challenges that were faced. So there might have been 1 or 2 problems, or 3, that were not conducted well. And we wish those ones well if they have gone to independent or to another party. But 90% of the nominations were very good.
Joy, what are your thoughts? And perhaps we can just have that number on our Super Bowl once again to remind us of this magnitude of numbers that we're dealing with.
3752.
Yes.
I'm telling you, one or two problems. The primaries were shambolic, and not just on NASA's side, not just on ODM's side. This was across the political parties. One thing is that they grossly underestimated the interest of Kenyans in the process. They thought it was business as usual, turnout of maybe 30%, and then we can get this thing over and done with by 12 o'clock, and we move forward. But Kenyans have realized that if you get the wrong candidate at nominations, then at election day, you actually do not have a choice. So they've taken an interest in the nominations from this time. Unfortunately, the political parties also still had the old mentality, where there were some preferred candidates in some places. And we saw, especially day one of Jubilee nominations, that was the problem, because people went expecting to have a process, and they realized the way things have been planned, there's no process. It's just a rubber stamping. And so I'm hoping that these nominations have given the political parties homework to do, but also at the same time is something for them to look at internally. And you cannot critique IEBC for not having credibility while you yourselves in your own house, you cannot keep house. It's one of those things that's an oxymoron. So they need to learn the lessons, and they also need to cut some slack to IEBC, because quite frankly, none of them stood up to the standard that they're holding IBC to. None of them stood up to it.
Jeanette, a quick response from you before we come to you, Kamodo.
I agree. You don't expect political parties to do nominations like the way IEBC will do general election. IEBC is spending 40 billion shillings to conduct Kenyan elections. And parties have very little money to conduct elections. They are not well resourced. So there are challenges I've accepted that we faced, but by and large, we did better than Jubilee.
No.
Junaid is very generous to his party, which is as expected. But I think there are two issues. One is these are not the independent candidates that the Constitution speaks to.
Exactly.
The Constitution speaks to independence in reality, in real independence, in ideology, in affiliation, but these are people who would, but for the bar against party hopping, these are the people who have joined other parties. There used to be one of my friends who used to have a van outside IEBC there, collecting people who were coming in who had found no other place, and a receipt so that you could then get a certificate. Now, those are the sorts of people who are now calling themselves independent. But the reality is that there are two groups of independent candidates. There are those who actually were rigged out of very shambolic elections. By the way, my view is that those are a minority. For all the things we say about the shambolic elections, to a large measure, some of them fairly are representative of the wishes of the people. Even if they are not very well managed, they generally represent the will of the people. Now, those ones, the ones who lost genuinely, are are candidates who because of the anger by their supporters and themselves, you might actually find them in parliament. I think the problem of the independent, and where both the President Kenyatta and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga will have to be very careful, is that this election, as we have said over and over ad nauseum, is about turnout. If you stop these independents from, and some of them did very well, even though they lost, they did very well. If you stop them from being involved in the political process, their supporters will be discouraged, which means they're not going to come out and vote. So in a sense, there's a conflict between the interests of the presidential candidates who wouldn't mind the independents actually participating, and the people like Junaid who won the tickets. Because the ones who won the tickets, they don't want their party leaders campaigning for anyone else. They just want them to be campaigned for. So you can understand the conflict between the party leaders who are looking for presidential ballots and their party candidates who don't want that to happen. So how the party leaders manage that conflict is going to be very tricky. I saw Honorable Raila today, I think, talking about how they are not supporting, if my hearing of him was right, they're not supporting independent candidates. That, from where I sit, is a very dangerous statement, in terms of encouraging turnout. Because at the end of the day, all those candidates in NASA zones, whoever they are will eventually vote for the NASA presidential candidates. So for you, it doesn't matter. So they have to walk that terrain very carefully so that they don't discourage those people from turning out to vote.
Daisy, how important will this constituency, as we like to put it, be in the 12th Parliament? Will they be the game changer? Will this be a force to reckon with, do you think?
I don't think so, because when you hear, first of all, I think one of the biggest problems is that we have a problem of not having a losing culture. In Kenya, nobody loses. Everybody wins, which is why you have that number. And I do agree to a large extent with Kamodo that despite the nominations being shambolic, they were an expression of the people. I mean, the people were able to adequately express themselves. So even though you lost, despite having a high number of, votes, you still lost. And I think that in terms of seeking to build a political party culture, the leadership of the political parties need to see how do they bring these people into their fold. I mean, they should have had a plan.
Could this break the tyranny of numbers, do you think, Daisy?
I don't think so, because they will go out and campaign. The party leaders have an obligation to campaign for those people who are vying on their party tickets. And so they will do that. So independents will essentially be campaigning for themselves. So even this whole thing of association of independents is an oxymoron, because you can't be an independent and say that you're supporting a president. In fact, I think
and many of them heavily criticize the political parties and how they've run their affairs during the primaries.
So
but then
these are
suddenly
so
still
losers.
support them.
These are losers. These are those people who feel that they should have won, save for a shambolic process or some unseen hand that, rigged them out. And the political party machinery will throw its weight behind its candidates.
Right.
I mean, they will be foolish not to, because their strength in parliament
will lie in
depends
their numbers.
on their numbers, not the numbers of independents, because the independents can go either way. They are not bound to any party. So they can say that they're supporting you, but then their support now will be determined by whatever sway it is that you hold over them.
Jeanette,
so I
are they
think
sore losers, as Daisy says, these independent candidates? Should they just accept that the people refuse them in round one and go home?
No, it's your choice. This is an expression of the Constitution that gives you an avenue to, and the law that gives you an avenue to go to the people again on 8th of December to see whether you can now lose proper if you're not satisfied with with the election. So I think, as Kamoto has put it, there are few who have lost genuinely. Who feel that they didn't lose genuinely at the nomination time, and there are many of them who lost but still want to try.
Are there
again.
some who lost genuinely in ODM? Do you think?
Oh yeah.
Who lost?
Are there some? Do you think
Unfairly.
who genuinely lost fairly in your party?
Yeah, a few of them.
Can you
There are
name
not
a few?
so many. Yeah? No, me, I don't have the list, but
But surely you have some thoughts on who you think lost.
They're not many. They are very few.
They're a minority.
They are very few.
Okay, we want to take a quick break.
But you see, the issue also of saying independents, when they come to parliament, they can choose whom to work with. The few who came even this time decided to work with the government. There are, I think, 6, 7 of them, and they were independent in the last general election. We've also seen people who were elected on parties who cross also again when they reach to parliament.
Right.
When they reach in parliament.
Yeah.
So it's an immoral way of the toxic way of the politics of this country.
Okay, that's a good place to take a break. When we come back, we will wind up our discussion. Of course, we will talk about a certain name appearing on the IEBC list for presidential candidate within the NASA coalition. We can't fail to talk about that. We're taking a break. We'll also be looking at your feedback. The hashtag is Checkpoint at KTN News, at Yvonne Okwara. Be right back.